Eternals. Eternity. That's kind of what it felt like while sitting in the theater watching this thing at times. Eternals is brought to us by director Chloe Zhao and stars Emma Chan, Angelina Jolie, and Kit Harington. So the Eternals are a group of beings from another planet that came here at kind of like the dawn of our time to protect human beings from creatures called the Deviants. The Deviants are these monsters that look like unused versions of monsters from the first Hellboy movie that are here to just kill people. And the Eternals have been here for millennia protecting little old us from these monsters. Fast forward to present day and all the Deviants have been defeated and now the Eternals are just kind of hanging out, being human and shit. But after all this time, now the Deviants have started to return, as well as a new threat that may be tied to the Eternals' origins. So now they gotta get the band back together so that they can save the world. So Eternals is a different kind of movie than we've gotten from Marvel in the past. Honestly, for a good portion of the runtime, this doesn't even feel like a Marvel movie, and I don't mean that in a bad way. A little bit of the way into watching this movie, I was actually kind of happy to see that. Wow, something fresh from the MCU. That is until the end of the movie when it reminds you real quick, fast, and in a hurry that you are watching a Marvel movie, because the end of this movie does what all MCU movies have done up to this point. It just becomes a big CGI fest with people doing things all over the place for whatever reason. And that's when you look at the screen and say, yep, this is part of the Marvel machine. Now, this is a long movie, clocking in at 2 hours and 37 minutes, and unfortunately, it does feel like it. I was really into it for about the first hour and a half, and then it started to drag, which leaves about an hour plus left on its runtime, by the way. And while it did pick up a bit, it never quite fully recovered. This is a big, grand story, but I don't think it needed to be as long as it was. I think it still could have been as big and epic as it is and just cut away some of this fat. I didn't feel like any of the individual scenes were really like drug out or anything, but I did feel like some of the scenes just weren't really needed, especially in the second half of the movie. Like I said, that is where things really start to drag. Now, unlike MCU movies of the past, this movie focuses a lot less on action and focuses a whole lot on characters. Unfortunately, it doesn't always quite succeed. While I do think the characters were the strongest point of this movie, they were also one of the things that kind of hurt it, because even with all that development, some of them still came across as a bit hollow. What I mean by that is that all the characters come across as pretty interesting on a personal level, but when it comes to the superhero stuff, they're all kind of dull and generic. I really enjoyed the parts of the movie that explored how these people take in this world, these people that live forever and have been here for centuries. The parts showing them in the past interacting with human beings, the parts nowadays seeing how they view a world through thousands of years of memories. This was all really interesting and entertaining. Oddly enough, when they went into their whole superhero thing, flying around, running around, shooting laser beams out of their eyes and shit, that's when it got a bit dull. All the performers seemed really invested in those character moments, but when the action scenes came about, they all seemed a bit vacant. The action's all really well choreographed and it looks good, but it's just not too terribly exciting. You have people flying around, running real fast, shooting eye lasers, controlling minds, just all kinds of stuff, and it's just not that exciting. That's a problem. I feel like Disney greenlit this movie before they acquired the rights to the X-Men, or whatever the hell they're gonna call them now. X-People, X-Them, X-They, because the powers here seem like budget X-Men and not all that interesting. Our villains, the Deviants, are all kinda generic too. Not really kinda, they're really fucking generic. There is one that's an exception, but even that one is fairly unexceptional. It's the pace of this movie though that really hurts it. With a good bit of tightening, this could have been something special. Unfortunately, it comes across as a movie with some neat ideas, but overall just kind of overly long and bloated. The special effects are also a bit inconsistent. I mean, mostly they're pretty good, but when they're not, they really stand out. Now that being said, even the bad effects in this movie are probably better than the best effects in movies with much lower budget. But that's the thing, this is a Marvel MCU movie that cost over $200 million. You expect more. Like I said though, none of them are awful, but when the lesser ones do show up, they really stand out. I like that they tried something new here, but since they're not being very successful with it, we're probably not gonna get much change in the future in the MCU now. And that sucks, because there is an interesting fresh movie here, it just needed a bit of tweaking. Guys, Eternals is an interesting movie with a fresh take on the MCU. Unfortunately, it is bogged down by a terrible pace in its second act, and while it does have some really interesting characters in one way, in others they are kinda dull. It's an interesting movie on some levels, but a hard watch in a theater. Maybe when you can get home and pause it, it'll be worth checking out on streaming.
Across the street.
I hate that this movie turned out the way that it did because they did try something new, and now that the studio sees that that didn't work, they're just not gonna let anything new happen anymore. Back to the assembly line with you Marvel movies. That being said, there is a movie worth seeing here, just not in theaters. It needs to be in an environment where you can take a break if needed because things do drag a bit. And if you're okay with that, then check out Eternals one night at home, and I think you'll have a decent enough time with it. So there it is, guys, my review of Eternals. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you want to help out the channel, check out my Patreon in the description below. Become a jarhead and get some of the awesome benefits to go along with that, like these guys. And possibly join my top tier and become a bad motherfucker like my man Greg. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Olympia. There's a mid-credit scene and an after-credit scene in this movie, and both of them introduce new characters to the MCU. However, if you're not already familiar with these characters, which, by the way, I don't think most people are, then I don't think that the vast majority of people are going to be that excited by these. I mean, who knows where they'll go in the MCU, and later down the line, these scenes may mean more then. But right now, they're just gonna, okay, that happened. I remember when post-credit scenes used to be a lot cooler, by the way. What the hell happened?